Hey guys, Mr. Kennedy here with another Onshape video for you. In our last video we started doing this thing, which is going to become a rocket ship of sorts, and the purpose of this tutorial series is basically to introduce some more complex sketching skills and introduce some of these new 3D creation methods. In the last video we learned about the revolve tool. Now there are a number of new things that we're going to learn in this one, so let's jump straight in. I'll just move my mug out of the way. Okay, so here we are in the space. This is what we got up to last time. Now, there was one thing that we did at the end where we actually created that revolve, and you had to choose those 4 sketch regions and an axis to spin it around. And if we go back into this revolve, which is the phrase that I use, go back into the revolve, go back into the sketch, whatever. So I'm going to go back into the revolve here by double clicking on it, and here were those settings. Now, what I actually want to, whoops, I just nudged the spacebar and changed something, so I'll just cancel out of that and come back in. Now I actually want to change something here. I had forgotten, I haven't done this in a while, and I actually didn't want to choose this particular sketch region here, which is a good opportunity for us to learn, I guess, to come back in and remove a sketch region. I know I left that top region unselected. I also want to leave that side little, whatever you call that, section unselected, and then I'll just hit tick there to update it, and it gives us this sort of conical or concave, whatever you call it, curve around the side of my rocket ship, and that's important for some stuff that we're going to do soon. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some fins on here, and they have to attach onto here. They're going to sort of come down like this, I guess, like some sort of rocket fins that come off the side, but I need them to attach to a specific point. And what that means is I need a flat surface. One of the few things in Onshape that I find a little bit annoying, although it makes a lot of sense when you know how it works, is that when you're doing a sketch, you obviously can only do a sketch on a flat piece of paper. In real life, you'd get a piece of paper, you'd lie it on a desk, it's flat, it's a plane, a surface, and you can draw on it. It's the same in Onshape. You need a flat surface or a flat plane. I could do a sketch there, I could do a sketch there, but I can't do a sketch on here because it's a curved face. It doesn't make sense. So I can't do a sketch on here either. Now I could do one there, but I need to be able to link onto stuff. So there's a step here that we're going to do just to create some scaffold points, some base points, I suppose, that we can use just in here, some little flat segments. So let's go ahead and create those. Now to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by doing a new sketch on my front plane again. Because I've turned the vision of that off, I can't see it here to click it, but I can still select it up here on my feature tree. And then again, I'll spin my view to the front. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to introduce you to a new tool. We're going to learn this guy, Use Project Convert. Really useful. Basically what this does is, while you're in a sketch, it lets you choose elements of your existing 3D shape and sort of cast an image of them onto your sketch plane, if you like. It's kind of like, you know, if you were standing in the middle of a room and someone turned on a light and your shadow gets cast onto the wall behind you, that's what's happening. You're casting a picture of that thing, you know, from in between the viewer and the sketch plane. So in this case, for example, I can see that this circle, yes, it goes through this sketch plane, but it's in front of the sketch plane. And if I choose my sketch front, use project convert, and I click on this circle, you can see what it's done there. It's taken the front view, because that's the view that I'm taking for this sketch. It doesn't actually matter where your camera is pointed, by the way. It's all about the sketch plane. So it's going to take a picture of this circle, or like a cross set, or whatever, however you want to see it, at that sketch plane, and it's put it there. So on that sketch plane, that circle is going to provide us a line. If I choose this one, it gives us that bottom line. If I choose this curved face, it's going to create that arc for me. And so you can see if I just hit so what I've got now is this kind of 4-sided shape. It's got a bottom line, a top line, and these 2 arcs on either side. And really all I did was I used my Use Project Convert tool. Very useful tool. It should be your friend. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to come back to my front view, I'm going to get a line tool, and I'm just going to connect from that line to that one. Straight line. What I need, like I was saying before, is a flat surface that I can do a sketch on. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a line down the center here from the middle of that line to the middle of that line, and that will be, you'll see why in just a moment. So I'm going to accept that. Now what I want to do is I need this segment here. I'm going to extrude this as a 3D part, both sides of the sketch plane so that it's symmetrical. So I'm going to go sketch, beg your pardon, I'm going to go extrude. It's selected that already because I had it selected, and I don't want it to be blindly this way in 25 millimeters. What I want it, I actually only want it to be, I don't know, maybe 3 millimeters. Let's go 2. And I want it to be either side, so I'm going to tick that symmetrical box. Now, we've got an error. Boolean resulted in no geometry. The parts either do not intersect or are totally contained. So what's happening here, what it means by that is the parts do not intersect. I want to add these parts together. I don't want to choose new and make this a separate part. I want it to be a part of this same body. The reason it can't do it is because this is a curve, and yes, they share that same face, but because this surface is rounded and this object I'm telling to come straight out from that point, they actually don't overlap at any point. You can see here, if I zoom right in, there's sort of this confusing gap in there, and Onshape doesn't like that. It can only join parts when they actually join, when they're touching each other. And technically, these aren't touching. There's an overlap of 0 millimeters between them. There might be a gap of 0 millimeters as well, but there's an overlap of 0 millimeters. And because they're not intersecting or not actually connected, they can't join. So, how do we solve that? Well, I've just cancelled out of that extrude. I've got another segment of this sketch, this part here, and I'm going to use that as well, but I can't click it right now because this object is in the way. Even when I'm inside sketch mode and I can choose that sketch region, I can't choose this other one because my rocket body is in the way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come down to part 1, down on my bottom of the feature tree here. Hover over part 1, the whole rocket body will highlight in orange. That's the part. I'm going to turn off vision of it. Now I can see this sketch without my rocket body in the way. I'm going to go extrude, choose that segment, and also that segment. Now that the body's gone, you can choose it, and I can say 2 millimeters, symmetric. Now, because I've turned off the vision of this part, the default setting here changes to new, and I still want it to add on to that. So you have to sort of manually now say, I want to add, and then it goes red. The reason it goes red, because it doesn't know, I've told it to add, it doesn't know what it wants to merge with. What are we adding to? Because that part, the vision of that part was turned off, it doesn't know that that's what I want to connect it to. So we've just got to choose it manually. At this point, you could either turn your vision back on and select it here, or you could leave your vision off and you could come and choose it down here on your feature tree. Both will do the same thing, it doesn't matter. So, and then I hit tick. Now, the reason that that's worked is obviously because this segment here is going to be attached to the rest of this part, it does intersect with this body. There's not a 0 millimeter gap, there's an overlap here of however many millimeters this line is. So it connects with no problems and it's worked properly. So that's that part. That was long-winded, I guess, to get just this little segment, but we learned a number of things, so it was an important little skill. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to create some lines we're going to make a new sketch, and we're going to start to create some lines here that we use to define these rocket fins. So I'm going to do a new sketch again on my front plane. New sketch on the front plane. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the line tool. I'm going to start by making a line straight down from the bottom. I'm going to make it 5 millimeters. I'm going to make another line tool. Zoom in so we can see that. Another line that goes left from the bottom point, has to connect to that bottom point, and it's going to come left, a horizontal line that's 15 millimeters long. I'm going to do a third one that connects to the end of that and goes up 10 millimeters long. And then a last one that connects to the end of that one and goes left horizontally, and it is also going to be 10 millimeters long. Okay, don't worry too much about what that's for. I'm going to link onto these dots for other things in a minute. I'm going to draw a shape here and I'm going to lock onto these, which is why I need those locked in place. It's just the way that I've decided to create this. Now the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a center point circle. I'm going to draw a 5mm circle that locks onto this bottom left corner like this, and I'm going to make that a 5mm diameter. Now this curve, the bottom half of this curve, is going to become the bottom of my rocket fin. So what I want to do now is cut off the top of it. So to do that, I need to continue this line from there to the left-hand side of the circle. And then I can use these scissors, the trim tool, and I can come and trim off pieces of a sketch. I could take off this line, but I just want to take off that arc and that arc. Okay, so now what I've got are these 4 lines. I used a center point circle to create this semicircle at the bottom there. And I've defined all of those with the dimension tool. Everything's black, everything's fully defined, so that's what we want. Now in the next step, we're going to start using some tools here to do some interesting 3-point arcs. What I want to do now is I need to lock onto that point. In order to do that, I believe, oh no, it lets me do it straight away. Okay, so I'm going to do a 3-point arc that starts at the bottom of the curve up here. I do want to actually, I'm going to use project convert, and I'm going to grab that curve just so that I've got that as a sketched dot there. You can see now that dot exists as a little black dot there. So I'm going to do a 3-point arc. I'm going to connect it to the bottom of this curve that I just used. And then I'm going to finish it at the corner of these two 10mm lines. And I'm going to make the third point somewhere about here. Use the dimension tool to tell it that it's 15mm long. Okay, now the next arc that I'm going to create here is going to introduce a new tool. It's going to introduce you to the world of manually applying constraints. So I've talked a lot about this had a horizontal one, this had a vertical one, and it was constrained to be in line with the origin point. In the last video I talked a bit about tangent stuff, but we weren't actually manually applying it, we were just paying attention to it. This time we're going to manually apply this constraint. So I'm going to go 3-point arc, start on that dot there, finish on that dot there, and I'm just going to end it in the middle of nowhere, around about there. Now what I can do here is I want to say that I want this to be a really smooth continuation. You know what I mean? I don't want there to be a corner point there. I don't want it even to be like that where it sort of comes down and goes boom with a corner. I want that to be a smooth flow on line. So to do that, I can choose both of these arcs, select that one. I don't have to hold shift or anything. Select that one as well, they're both selected, and I can come up here to my constraint options, and I want to find the tangent one. Now I know from maths, from doing maths at school, that that's the icon for tangent. There's a circle with a line that is tangent to the circle. If you don't know what that is, send me a comment, ask your maths teacher, we'll figure it out for you later. So we're going to choose that, and it's altered my arc. It just changed that. I haven't defined a radius, and you can see that the arc is now fully black. That's because I've defined this radius, I defined the start and finish point, and I've told it that it has to be tangent to that line. And to do that, it's had to change the radius for me. There's only one option for a radius that makes it tangent with that. So that's why this has worked in this case. Okay, now I'm going to try and go through these next few steps pretty quickly, just to stop this video from being too long. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit here. We're going to use the 3-point arc tool to do another arc that goes from there to there, and we're going to end it, you know, whatever, roughly there, and then we're going to do another manually applied tangent constraint that connects this arc to this curve down here that we created, this bottom of this thing, that semicircle we made before. And so what it will do is it's made that tangent there. Just note that when you created this arc, if you did it like that, just because I told you not to lock it onto anything and you kind of smashed it out here, when I make these tangent, it'll snap to the closest option. So this will probably make it tangent coming downwards, and it stuffs up. So you just have to pay attention. You want to drag it roughly close to where you want it, and then manually apply that tangent constraint, and it will work fine. Okay, now I'm going to use the line tool again, and I'm going to create a line sticking out from the top of that curve we just used before, up here, like this. And then I'm going to use this tail, instead of cancelling it or hitting escape, I'm going to lock it onto that one. And now instead of defining the length of these, I'm going to change the angles of them, which I think I've talked to you about before. You could use the dimension tool to change the length of something, to set the space between two objects. So I could set the space between there and there, or I can choose this line, and I can choose something like that line, and now it lets me change the angle here, which I want to be 70 degrees. Now, because I've defined the start point and the angle, this line has gone black because I can't move it this way. I can't move it this way by sliding it or by changing the angle, but this dot is still blue. I can change the length of that line, which will also simultaneously change the angle of this line. If I lock in the angle of this line, then neither of these will be able to change. This line can't change this way because I know it's locked into that and it's got to stop there. And it can't slide this way because it's got to finish and start on that dot. The only thing I can change about this line right now is the angle. So I'm going to grab this dimension tool, choose that line and this line, and I'm going to tell Onshape that the angle between these two has to be 105 degrees. Now, you'll notice that everything's black and that that's all worked. However, what you will notice is that this section of these few sections of the sketch have been shaded in grey. This one is still white. Now what that means is it's not a closed section. So for example, if I grab the line tool and over here I just draw a few lines like this. Whoops, just hit F1, close that tab. So there's a gap here. This is not an enclosed region, which means when I go to do an extrude, I can't choose it. But if I use a line tool and I connect those, so that now that's a closed shape, it colors it in gray to let you know that that's an enclosed shape that we can use. Now, the reason that that's stuffed up is so I know that I used that line before and I got this dot and this dot, but if I turn off that part, okay, so it can, that's interesting. It does have this line here, but for some reason it's still not shaded in. I might just quickly pause and I'll figure out exactly why that is, where the gap is that's stopping this from working, and I'll come and show you in a second. Okay, this is really interesting. So what I've figured out here is, so I'll turn that part off again. Looks like everything's fine and dandy, but if you zoom right close in on here, I've got a gap there. And because of that gap, I can't select this region as a sketch surface because there's a gap. It's not an enclosed shape. Now, why has that happened is a really good question. So if I turn back on that part, you can see that it's there. Now, when I chose this line before and I used the Use Project Convert tool, it's projected a dot there of where that arc ends. It's kind of tried to take that curve and slam a dot onto my sketch plane of where it finishes. And then when I came with this arc and I tried to lock onto that dot, it looks like instead of connecting to that dot, I actually connected to that corner. And so what do I do now? Well, there are a few different options. You could go back and change things. I could go way back to when I created this body. I could go way back to when I created this arc right back in my first sketch when I was doing this body or whatever, and make some changes there if you really wanted to. For the purpose of keeping this video going though, I'm just going to grab a line tool and connect those. Grab a line tool, connect from that dot to that dot. Now if I turn off the vision of that body, you can see that there's a line there that encloses this sketch region and there's no longer a gap, which means this is filled in grey and that will work fine. So I'll turn the vision of that back on, and it looks like we're ready to turn this now into a 3D. Oh no, the last thing I want to do, so I've shown you the fillet tool already, but we can also fillet inside a sketch. So I've got up here sketch fillet. You can choose this and just click on a corner and it will start to fillet that as a part of your sketch. You can change the radius of it or you can just drag this. In this case I'm going to do just the default was fine, 5mm, hit enter and it applies that. So now the sketch is rounded. Alternatively, I could have extruded it and then used the fillet tool to round off the corner, but this reduces a step on my feature tree, which is what I always want to do. It's like a mini game, reduce the steps on the feature tree. Now I'm also just going to delete those. Okay, So I'm done, hit accept. Here's my finished sketch. Now I want to do an extrude, just with the normal extrude tool this time. I'm not doing revolve, and I want to choose all 4 segments of this. I'm going to make them symmetrical, 2 millimeters. Now, if I had not initially made that fin here, this body, it would freak out at this point because it wouldn't be overlapping with anything. I would have that same issue that I had before. But now, because that fin exists and that fin there exists and it's attached to this body, this fin can attach to that and it will work. So there we go. We've got my leg, or my first fin of my rocket there, and that will work fine. Now all I want to do is really quickly, to finish off the video, I want to pattern that another 3 times around this object. So I'm going to grab my circular pattern tool. Remember, you need to change it from a part pattern to a feature pattern. This time I want to pattern 2 different extrudes. The first extrude, which was the little fin that I created there, and the second extrude, which was my whole big fin, and then I need to choose the axis. Now, what do? I can't choose an axis, I've only got 3D shapes here. Well, what I can do is I can come back and turn on the vision of any of these previous sketches which did have a line going down the center of my object. If not that one, I could use this one, I had a line there. Or if not that one, I could turn on this last one, and I've got this little line here. You could use any of those. I'm going to use the first line that I drew in this document, which was that one back in sketch 1. You can say how many times you want to pattern it around. Perhaps you just want 3. I'm going to go with 4, hit accept, and there we've got these legs and fins around my rocket. Now that'll do. Next time we'll come back and we'll look at creating the nose cone. Hopefully that wasn't too much in one. It was a long video, but we learned a lot of new tools there. Well done. See you guys in the next one.